when I was going through undiagnosed PTSD, there were so many questions. It was so shameful to even talk about things I was going through. And now that I'm on the other side, now that I've found the tools to recover and the solutions, I look back and say, wow, that was a wasted 10 years. I didn't have to feel shame. I didn't have to be so confused. I didn't have to be reliant on drugs or alcohol or risky behavior. So that's why I'm so vocal for people hearing me today and the future generations that PTSD is treatable, and that from sexual assault, we should not be quiet, and we don't have to be. That was nothing that was our fault. So that's why I am taking my power back and doing what I can.
Om Namah Shivaya, 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 Om Namah.
Good day, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Break the Cycles podcast. I am your host, Alisha Sheri. And if this is your first time watching this podcast, it is about rebuilding from the inside out. Whether you're healing from toxic relationships or trying to break generational patterns, this space is for you.
Hey, soul sister. Before we dive in, make sure you followed and subscribed to this podcast so you never miss the next drop of healing energy. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment or some feedback. Let me know what's been resonating with you and what topics you want me to cover in future episodes. Your voice helps me shape this space for our community. Also, if something in this episode speaks to your spirit, share it with a friend, a sister, or anyone who's walking their own healing journey. Because together, we're not just healing, we're evolving, expanding, and reclaiming our power. Now, let's get into today's episode.
And today I have the honor of having a special guest who is an author, a mother, and a mental health advocate. She has recovered from PTSD and she has created a framework and helps others do the same. So I would like to welcome onto the show Simone Swartz. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Such an honor.
And before we start, I want to just ask, what does breaking the cycles mean to you, Simone?
It means having victory in your life. It means having something you can celebrate. It means breaking the old traumatic cycles, whether it's generational or one single event in your life. But it really means taking back your power from, like I said, generations or just one event. But we all deserve to take back our power and be in charge of our own lives, right?
Yes. And you actually have a nonprofit that gives sexual assault survivors service dogs. Is that correct?
So I founded one of the first nonprofits to give sexual assault survivors with PTSD service dogs. So I have stepped down from that nonprofit, but I still advocate for service dogs, for sexual assault PTSD, and for mental health. So, yeah.
Awesome. That's beautiful. So just tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What has inspired you to start this journey with PTSD?
I experienced how I got my PTSD was from a sexual assault in the Army. And what led me to now 20 years later be so vocal about speaking out is because when I was going through undiagnosed PTSD, there were so many questions. It was so shameful to even talk about things I was going through. And now that I'm on the other side, now that I've found the tools to recover and the solutions, I look back and say, wow, that was a wasted 10 years. I didn't have to feel shame. I didn't have to be so confused. So that's why I'm so vocal for the people hearing me today and the future generations, that my message is PTSD is treatable, and that from sexual assault, we should not be quiet, and we don't have to be. That was nothing that was our fault. So that's why I am taking my power back and doing what I can. Like I said, I started the nonprofit, and then now I'm going and taking the message to more people globally to say that there is hope, and PTSD can be acquired from other traumas other than combat. And that message isn't as talked about in the media. So that's where I feel like that's my niche, is to get that message out there, because there's a lot more people that have been sexually assaulted, a lot of people in America who have witnessed and been a part of gun violence in the American streets, just like combat overseas. But in America, I'm here to give a voice to those populations, and to say that PTSD is treatable no matter what trauma. So not just all the negativity that we hear about in the news, almost soldier suicides and things like that. They don't talk about the recovery stories, the happy endings that, okay, soldiers have been through things, but now they're better. We can keep going after tremendous trauma.
Absolutely. I agree. And I was never in the service, but I did support as a contractor for 18 years. And it would blow your mind of how many victims there are, whether civilian or active duty. And they even have all these programs. And I'm just like, I think they need to do a little better. But in general, I think that's awesome. And I'm sorry for what you've gone through. But I think having voices and creating spaces as such inspires people to speak up. And I think that's what the world needs more of today. And we're starting to see it, right? We're starting to see it in the celebrity world or whatnot. But I think the more women that come together and show other women that it's safe to be expressive, it's safe to use your voice, and to kind of give them the courage to do so is very important. I think a lot of people connect PTSD to combat, like you said. In fact, I never knew PTSD was like a thing other than something that one would experience in war or something like that, and until I was sexually assaulted myself, right? And there was different times in my life where I was assaulted 3 times, and I was at a different age or a different time and space in my life. But it really did bring PTSD to me in terms of moving forward in a romantic, intimate relationship. I was very guarded, being assaulted by people that you trust or people that should have maybe even protected you or loved you, kind of shifts your mind. And at some point, you almost feel connected or linked to it. You start following this path of, why did this happen? So it makes you really guarded, and it makes you like, can I trust again? Can I love again? Can I get close to someone again? Are they going to hurt me again? Are they going to assault me? So it kind of builds this whole thing in your head. So I can totally relate. And that's when I realized I had PTSD. When I started going to therapy and counseling, I was like, wait, they're like, I think you have PTSD. And I was like, me? So it's just one of those things I think we need to kind of speak on more in today's
Oh,
world. Just,
100%. And being with you, a sister survivor, that is so empowering. And the fact that there's 2 women in the room here now, and both of us were assaulted. So it does happen more than people know. And if it hasn't happened to you, it's happened to a loved one or a friend. So that's one of the reasons why are we being quiet about it. The more quiet we are, the more protection the predators have. I'm so glad that Hollywood's finally speaking up about this, because I saw that 80,000 boys from the Boy Scouts had been sexually assaulted. And that's just coming out. It's not just women, it's men and boys and girls. And so the thing is, though, the more we speak about it, it gives our voices strength. And I'm hoping it makes the predators shake in their boots, that they know, if I do something that they know is wrong or that could cross somebody's boundary, it's going to be talked about. There's no safe space anymore. The more we talk about it, then even the high people up that are abusing people are going to know it's going to come out eventually. And you also brought up how you've been sexually assaulted a number of times. And that also is a very common statistic, is that if you've been sexually assaulted as a child, I think it's over 50% more likely to be assaulted as an adult. And if you've been assaulted, you're more likely to be in a domestic violence relationship. So what this tells us is that sexual assault, once, even a childhood or as an adult, isn't the end. Okay. And that's what healing is so important. But trauma makes more trauma. It doesn't make you more stronger. There's so many layers to it that you end up, you can be re-victimized very easily. And predators look for that. So that's another reason that it's so important to speak up, because it's too prevalent. But there is healing and there is ways to help your childhood wounds and to make sure that you protect yourself from being in domestic violence relationships. When you come from trauma, the world can be an unsafe place. You have a distrust of authority. You're not even connected to your body. So it makes it very important to get into healing and connection, physical connection to your body. PTSD is much more than a mental condition. And they're calling it now post-traumatic stress injury, not a disorder, which I like to call it more like an injury. So it's much more than your brain, okay? Because it's all felt through your body. You have your trauma reactions and your muscle memory, and your whole body is trying to protect you from it not happening again. So the sooner that you can talk about it and get into therapy modalities and release the trauma that's stored in your body as well as your mind, then you're going to be almost like a reset and safe in your body again, where these predatory relationships don't feel safe. Coming from trauma, it only makes sense that, okay, as an adult, that's a safe relationship. That's all you've known. So it's very easy to get back into these dating relationships. Oh, this is how my experience, you're used to that trauma memory. So it's very important to really take time to heal.
Absolutely. And my first sexual assault was when I was like, I want to say I was somewhere between 7 and 10. I don't even recall. I just know I was super young. And I didn't realize that I was carrying that all the way up into my adulthood. And even my teenage years, the second time I was 16. And then even recently, up until I was an adult, was when I was like 33. So it's funny you say that, because it started in childhood and it really came in every single, right, child, teen, adult years. And I can't say one was any worse or better to really deal with. I think trauma is trauma, like you said, but I think as I got older, and luckily this last time I was in therapy and I was aware of PTSD and I was aware, okay, this is traumatic. Whether I try to brush it off, it still was an unhealed wound, right? And I had to go and do that inner work and that inner healing so that I didn't hold it in, the anger, the grudge, the rage. Not to say that it justified anybody's action and that it's just forgive and forget situation, because definitely not that. And sometimes I do feel people think that, well, I can't just forget about it. You're never going to forget about it, right? But healing is really for yourself. It's really forgiveness starts. It's not for them. It's not closure for them. You don't even need closure from them. It's for yourself, so that you don't have to carry that emotion and lead with that emotion of pain and anger.
That's why I say that PTSD took 20 years of my life. I wasn't going to let it take another 20. So I did have to. Yeah, I'm not going to let these memories I'm trying to forget. I might block them out, but that's still not dealing with them, working too much or overeating, or like I said, all kinds of behaviors that you might not even realize is trauma related, but that's still controlling your life. I love that it's break the cycles, because you're breaking the cycle to take back your life.
Okay, Simone. So, what are common signs someone may be living with PTSD without recognizing it?
So PTSD can show up in people's lives as dysregulated sleep, digestion problems with authority, problems with interpersonal relationships, feeling isolated, not wanting to do things that you used to do, having a lack of interest in things you used to do, or just a lack of interest in general. It can also be shown as adrenaline seeking behaviors. So some people will isolate and will be depressed in their home. Some people will overcompensate and become the life of the party and start to really do, like I said, any type of adrenaline seeking behavior. It could be addiction to sex, addiction to just partying in general, risky things where, they're not taking their life serious anymore because it's all masking behaviors until you deal with the trauma. I feel like the adrenaline seeking is something not talked about enough in PTSD, because some people don't go outside. Some people have a problem with the public, but other people can deal with trauma by, like I said, overworking. They can work to the point where perfectionism, right? So overcompensating, where I had a mistake, I can't ever be wrong again. I had a mistake in my life, some trauma in my life, and I'm going to be the best that there is. I'm going to work out 24/7 and rise to the top at my job. Things that on the outside can look like, oh, this person's got it together, when emotionally, like you said, they're holding on, like you were holding on to years of trauma you didn't want to talk about. So those are some of the most common ways.
You literally just explained to me my whole version. I
Hey.
did just not. And it was more
Yeah.
than just the assault, the sexual assault. It was like a
Yeah.
lot of drama, over functioning to prove my worth, or perfectionist, like, and those are identities that a lot of us create in survival, right? And the majority of us never even connected with our true authentic self, or our highest self, adult self, whatever you want to call it. And it's crazy because I believe that was always within us to begin with. It's just that we were brought into a world and we had childhood, we were carrying trauma before we were even in this world. That's a whole nother conversation, ancestor trauma, right?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
we come into this world and we have our own childhood trauma, and it just keeps coming and it keeps hitting the body. And then the lack of energy flow, the stagnation in our body causes all of these stressors to be stored. And then we go into survival mode, right? Our nervous system is dysregulated. And then we cope with it, we suppress it, and we make it even worse by not talking about it. But the unfortunate part is, for me at least, and I know for many of us, we don't really enter our healing journey until later on in life. For me, it was like my early 30s, and I was like, wow, if I just would have known her 10 years ago, right? Or if I would have had the resources and tools I have now, how big of a difference that would make. But I think the biggest takeaway is that having people like us that create this space, just even for as a mother, for my children alone, I'm very grateful for it, because I see the healing transform in my teenage. She's 19 now, so she's almost out of teenage years, but I see these resources and tools that I can offer her. And whether we have kids or not, we offer it to the next generation. And it's like healing not only past generations, but forward generations too. So it's a beautiful thing. And I'm just grateful that we have these spaces and build this courage for others.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So we talked about trauma, how it shows up in everyday life, relationships, the emotional responses. What helped you begin shifting towards your healing in your own journey? Was there something that just kind of said, okay, this is where I'm going to make a difference?
So when I decided to have children, that was one huge, obviously life-changing event that I was getting ready for. And as any good parent would be, I want to be the best mom for my children. I want my children to have a better life than I had. So that starts with me. That starts with me addressing anything I need to fix. Let me go to therapy and let me start seeing how I can address my childhood issues with my mom. And so that was a big motivation for me, was to do the best for my children. And also just to be a better person, to get myself ready was okay. I want to be here for myself while I'm taking care of others. That's not, it's not just for my kids. You got to really think about yourself, because if you're giving everything to your kids, what do you have? So it was a well-rounded event. And at the time I was living with my husband, who was dealing with combat PTSD and childhood PTSD. So he would have CPTSD, complex PTSD. And that was one big event where in therapy, my therapist said, I don't want to talk about his military career. We want to we want to take care and be nurturing to other people in our life. But until you're nurturing yourself and giving yourself that time and ability to heal, you really can't be there for others. So that was the big motivation, where how am I going to be there for my children if I have triggers seeing a military uniform? So that was my motivation to look into solutions to PTSD. Because once I got the diagnosis and I said, wow, this isn't a terminal disease. It can be, but it's something that I'm not going to let it be. And so that was something in my mind. I said, okay, I'm not going to let this take over. I know what it is. So I'm going to look far and wide for solutions. And that led me to writing my book, because over the years, it was very hard to find adequate solutions to PTSD. Yes, talk therapy, conventional therapy can be very great, very good for some people, others not, but it's not the end all be all solution. So that's what led me to want to write the book and write that whole chapter of listing absolutely every therapy out there available today for PTSD, because it takes much more than just talking about it. You're actually going to have to, once you get further in, you're going to have to, like I do, give back to the community, have some kind of community social adjustment going on, because you can't just heal, in your living room. But if you never give back and find meaningful relationships, then depression is going to sink back in. So there's a big community piece that needs to be talked about with mental health.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree so much on that. And I think children obviously change the way forward, right? Our future generations. So I'm thankful for that. And when I first had my first child, I was straight out of high school. And the only thing I knew was that I wanted to give her a childhood that I didn't have, right? As a child, I was always bracing for impact. I was always worried about what's going to happen. And there was just so many things in my childhood that were wrong. And I just knew, and at the time I was 18, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And just grateful that kids and the future generations bring us that motivation to really instill change. And that'll do it, right? Because we're breaking cycles here. Yes.
Yes, of course. And the thing is, you can tell when some parents don't. There were some parents who don't find the courage to break the cycles. And what happens? That there's the same cycles repeat,
Yeah.
because you're not brave enough to face your childhood trauma and deal with a different way than how your parents treated you because of their trauma. It's break the cycle or keep it going. So
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. And I always tell people, and that's why in my work, I'm selective with people because of that. It's like, I'm not going to do it for you. This is where
Right.
people get it twisted, right? As a coach, I don't
Yeah.
do anything for you. You have to come to me being ready to do the work because no one can do it. No one can instill the alignment and the actions that's going to put you in alignment and keep you in alignment. That's
Yeah.
all a you problem. And so I'm very selective with that because if don't come to me wanting coaching and guidance if you're not willing to put the work in, because it's going to be a waste of both of our times. And I think as a cycle breaker in the family, it's not for everyone. I know that for a fact. It's not for everyone. We're the odd ones. We're the ones that are like the scapegoat of the family. And for a lot of people, it's just like you said, facing and reliving those moments. Nobody wants to relive those moments. Are you kidding me? I never wanted to go back to the time where I was assaulted or abused or whatever it was, right? But there's no way around it. And for the longest time, I tried to bypass that. I was like, let me do everything else, but go back and heal. I call it parts healing, where we're healing our inner child, our teen, and our adult. And I was like, I learned the hard way that there's no way to bypass that. You just cannot. And you have to go back and relive those moments, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
that's all part of the journey. So I love that answer. And that's what breaking the cycles is mainly about, the future generation. Like,
I
we
think
can't pass this
it's
on to our children and our children's children. It's just gotta
right.
stop.
Yeah, I think it's harder to ignore it. It's more work. It's more work to live in anger or repressed anger, and like you're saying, not even be your true self. And all the regrets and oh, having to avoid this person or this thing in life that, no, just let's talk about it. Let's get it out in the open. And it really ends up being not that hard as you think it's going to be. It's you're going to have days, but in the long run, it's much easier. Now look at me. I'm speaking globally to people about my trauma. It doesn't have control of me anymore. My attacker doesn't have control of me. The thoughts and memories don't have control of me. And that's it. You can get to that point because again, I've been there. I've been depressed. I've been avoidant, but it's much better to just deal with it. And again, it's not an overnight process, but it's much easier to heal yourself and
Absolutely.
create a better life. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And I think a lot of people, when we're in survival mode, we don't see that. The biggest transformation is, in my opinion, when you go from awareness, you can build and connect the dots. That's the easy part. When you go from there to alignment and staying in alignment, that's why the biggest thing, anything that someone's trying to change, whether it's working out, eating healthy, or meditating, whatever it is, the biggest part is that transition into alignment because we get there, we're like, ooh, this isn't normal. This is uncomfortable. So it's natural for the human body response is get out, fight or flight, right? I don't want to feel that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to relive that. And then that's why there's this back and forth, right? With whatever change we're trying to make. But what I tell people is if you just stay in there in that space and be uncomfortable long enough to make it comfortable, it becomes your norm, right?
Yeah.
Your new norm. And that's the biggest part, what people don't understand. They go there, they're like, then they just go revert back. And I'm like, no, just stay there,
Right.
stillness, right? Have a relationship with yourself, do some check-ins, body scans, meditate, right? This is where you build that new connection with yourself. Because if you never met her or him, then how do you know, right? And for many of us, that's the reality of it. We never met our true authentic self until we do the healing. And I just wish that I could just tap that into people, let them know that's all you got to do. You're almost there. Just stay there. You
Yeah.
know?
I had to create almost a new identity, a new way of living when I really decided to clean up my mind and my body. I literally got a whole new phone. I did not want anything to do with the old friends that I had. I knew, okay, to make this work, I'm going to have to find new friends, new positive friends. And that's literally what I did, was get a whole new number and start from zero. I moved. Moving doesn't solve your problems, but just a whole life reset, because I was so desperate to not go down another 20 years of these behaviors and this unhappiness. Even if I looked happy, I wasn't. So yeah, I had to really just completely reset. And guess what happened? Positive people, clean, sober, positive people came into my life. And it was amazing. I didn't miss almost any of my old life. I was like a whole different person when I decided that positivity and a new life, a healthy life, that's what I'm going to try. And I even said to myself too, okay, if it doesn't work, you know what? The bar is always going to be there. I can go back to hating the world and, blaming my attacker, or I can just deal with it and say, okay, this is what my life is going to be now. I'm going to make it the best that I can be, and stop thinking about these people and these problems that have controlled my life and my mind, because they're up in your mind and they're not around. The military was years ago. Why am I still thinking about it? I need.
You gotta let go. Yeah, you just gotta let
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I need to take control and be like, hey, no, I want to think about the best person that I can be, because that's what I'm striving for. But that comes from inner healing and strength, physical strength too. PTSD can cause a lot of physical ailments. It can be very physical. With healing, I highly recommend people get on a new physical activity, because that's going to help a lot. Exercise creates serotonin, oxytocin naturally. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that for your mental health?
That's how I started my healing journey, was yoga, and then eventually, but it
Yeah.
was movement in the body, right? And it's like, for people to understand, we hold all that, it's stored in the body, all the stressors. You don't have to necessarily wake up and go to the gym, but you have to move your body in some way, shape, or form.
If you've been listening to this podcast and finding yourself thinking, why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Why do healthy relationships feel unfamiliar? Why do I keep putting people first before myself? I want you to know you are not broken. Most of these patterns are rooted in what your nervous system learned was normal, familiar, or safe. That's exactly why I created my private and group coaching containers for cycle breakers. Together, we focus on nervous system regulation, breaking generational patterns, rebuilding self-trust, healing emotional conditioning, and helping you reconnect with your authentic self so you can finally lead from alignment instead of survival mode. Ready to stop just being aware of the cycle and actually start healing it, I invite you to book a free clarity call with me. We'll talk about where you are, what patterns you're trying to break, and what support would best align with your healing journey. You can apply at alishasheri.com/coaching. And just know healing is possible, safety is possible, and you do not have to navigate this journey alone.
Let's talk about your book a little bit. What can people expect in your book, and give some background on that?
Yeah. So my book is a very easy to read, step-by-step guide to PTSD recovery. It's not a memoir, is no gory details. It's just straight facts. Straight facts. I give some personal insight on the therapies that I've tried, and I recommend some that I haven't tried. But I leave a full list of PTSD therapies, FDA approved, not FDA approved, Eastern modalities, Western modalities, a complete list, which apparently, has crossed the lines for medical communities and stuff. And this is why there's not a complete list like this before, is because certain practitioners can only recommend what is in their practice. And me, being a coach and a mental health advocate, I can recommend everything that is under the sun that people have found helpful for PTSD recovery. So I'm crossing borders here, but my goal is that everybody out there dealing with PTSD finds their niche, finds their therapy that works. Whether it is counseling and yoga, whether it's you could try pharmaceuticals, you could try psilocybin, right? And now they've got microdosing is, I believe, is amazing therapy. It's not FDA approved yet, but I think it will be soon. And so, yeah, there's a lot of therapies out there that's not talked about enough. And that was my main thing, that I'm going to just write everything in a book, everything that will be helpful for people, and they don't have to go searching. Like you said, it's up to you to actually do it and see what works. And some of them might not work. So then, okay, go on to something else. But I also wrote a workbook, which it's a journal that goes chapter by chapter with the book. So you can journal, which that's very effective, right? When you're actually writing down and making it physically concrete, bam, your healing is sealed right there. It's making it physical. I've got affirmations at the end where you can write over and then repeat. That was like a gift from God telling me to, hey, don't keep these to yourself. You need to write it. And it took me so long to find all these solutions, even in 2020, right? 2026, it's like, why isn't there a book like this out? So that's why I wrote it.
I love that. And I'm big on integration. And I think healing, you can build material, you can do slide decks, you can present all this material to people, and even come up with frameworks, right? But I think the big piece is integration. Healing does not stick without integration. And that includes affirmations, journaling prompts, meditations, rituals, or practices, whatever you want to call them, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about building your toolkit with tools and resources that you can pull from that support nervous system regulation. So I love that your book includes integration, because that's what makes it stick, in my opinion, as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's unfortunately, that's why a lot of the things for PTSD is not, people are finding the right results, because the practitioners are only able to recommend one thing. But yeah, like you said, you need integration. PTSD is a full body, a whole experience. It's not just mental. So that's why you do need a complete life change, but for the better. Definitely for the better.
I agree. Okay, so before we close, I do what I'm calling it the lightning round right now. I'm going to come up with a better title.
Right?
Listeners out there, if you have a better title, please comment with your suggestions. But it's
Super
basically
sizzler.
just around just around the questions, but kind of is based on the theme of breaking the cycles. So you don't have to put too much thought into it. I'll just ask a few questions, and whatever comes up, comes up.
Right?
So the first one is, what is one daily habit that supports your emotional and spiritual well-being?
Oh, daily habit. That's exercise. I feel like exercise has become a spiritual journey for me. And if I don't do it every day, yeah, I haven't put in my work. I haven't put in my religion. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I go crazy. If I don't work out for 2 days or 3 days, I'm like,
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what is one cycle you hope more women begin breaking?
The shame, feeling shame after a sexual assault, or after being in domestic violence, relationships, intimate partner violence. Pellicott said, shame must change sides or switch sides, right? So that's facts right there.
I love that. I hope that's one cycle I agree with too, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, and before we do close, can you tell listeners where they can find you, what's coming up for Simone, and most importantly, where can they buy your book?
Yes, so it is available on the Big A and also on my website. And I'm on social media, so please follow me there. All my social media tags are the same. It's PTSD and What Helped Me typed out. And that's also my website, www.ptsdandwhathelpedme.com. And so y'all can reach out to me, or I'm on Instagram, TikTok, think Facebook. What's the other? YouTube? Yeah.
At least yours is the same for all of them. That's very smart.
So yeah, please reach out because I've opened up my calendar to accepting coaching clients as well. So I'm really excited to have some new people who are ready for change.
And to all the listeners, her website and all her social media tags will be displayed in the show notes. So you can just easily click down in the show notes. Thank you so much, Simone, for being here. It was a pleasure having this conversation. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for writing your book and coming up with a way to be a catalyst to those that truly need it in this community.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being brave to tell your story. So I'm so honored to be with another sister survivor.
And to all the listeners, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope today's conversation really resonated with you and gave you some courage and inspiration. If you are a victim of sexual assault or just a victim in any kind of trauma or dealing with trauma, I hope this conversation resonated with you. Please continue to build awareness, continue to choose alignment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya.